Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 437 for the 5th of March 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from rain-soaked Sydney, Australia. In fact, we've had quite a lot of rainfall lately. The ducks are happy. As my grandfather used to say, it's good weather for ducks. And speaking of things that go quack, news this week of David Avocado Wolf, as he's known. We're going to catch up with our friend and reporter Heidi Robertson, the Raw Skeptic in the Raw Skeptic Report, who is going to fill us in on the latest information about his Australian tour, and plus some news items from Jane Hansen, who we often quote on the Skeptic Zone. That's coming up at the top of the show. After that, we're going to be looking at a story as written at skeptics.com.au, the Australian Skeptics website, about our friends in Victoria at the Victorian Skeptics rumbling, discovering some dangerous products, potentially dangerous products, being sold in a Melbourne hospital. And homeopathy rears its ridiculous head once more. Also this week we have Brew Ha Ha from Australia Science TV, and it's Kelly Wong telling us about science and the Academy Awards, the Oscars. Then to round off the show, a special report with some scientists. This is where the theme of the show, the Skeptic Zone, science and reason. This is the science part. Restore and renew. Maynard's going to be chatting to some scientists here in Sydney about gene technology when it comes to botany. A really interesting series of interviews from Maynard. Gene technology and botany. The genetics of plants. And don't forget to check out Maynard's website at maynard.com.au for his podcasts and events. Now, in the past couple of weeks, I've started a new radio segment here in Australia just about skeptical issues, and I'll add a link to that in the show notes if you're living in Australia. The segment goes out on weekends early morning. I don't think there's a particular time. It's sort of slotted into the schedule with an old friend of mine, Mike Williams. And currently he's based here in Sydney working out of 2GB, but the show is syndicated. But if you go to the Skeptic Zone, skepticzone.tv, the website there, I will add a link in the show notes where you can listen to or download my radio segments. The first week was about general skepticism, and the one that's just gone out is about predicting the future. Can psychics predict the future? Long-time Skeptic Zone listeners will know that about once a year we mark the homework of Australia's greatest psychics and seers and see how their predictions stack up to reality. A new project I'm undertaking with the Australian Skeptics at the moment, we're we have collated 400 predictions over 12 years made by Australian psychics, and we're going through to do a comprehensive investigation into their accuracy. More news on that as we progress. And if you're in the Sydney area, you might want to check out Stranger Things Down Under. It's a Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/Stranger Things Down Under, one word. And I notice they have an event coming up on the 1st of April where they're off to spend a day with some UFO believers. This will be at the Ryde Eastwoods Leagues Club, and it goes from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m, so it should be quite an interesting afternoon. If you're interested in joining the Stranger Things Down Under group, going along to these things, then head for the website at Facebook, link in the show notes. And finally, if you head for the Facebook site of the Skeptic Zone, link on the show notes, I've put there a high-resolution, downloadable, printable picture of the pig. The flying pig I created for James Randi, the origami flying pig Pegasus. And it's made out of a Mongolian banknote. If you go there, click the link, download the high-res photograph of Pegasus, and if you want to, whack it on the wall. If you do that, by the way, why don't you post a picture of Pegasus in situ on our Facebook page? That would be fantastic. That's enough for me at the moment. I'm going to run downstairs, go into the cupboard above the fridge, behind the soda water, get out some popcorn. Microwave popcorn. Pop some popcorn. I think we all need a lot of popcorn lately with the world events and what's going on. While I munch that popcorn, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Published in the Daily Telegraph on February the 26th by Jane Hansen. David Wolfe, Flat Earther brings anti-vax message to Australia. Renowned international wellness guru and anti-vaccination proponent David Avocado Wolfe has raised the hackles of health experts and parents in the Byron Shire regarding his upcoming visit on March the 16th in Byron Bay. Critics say the event, which promises Wolfe will give, quote, Byron Bay the latest download on how the world really works, end quote, will provide a platform to mislead parents on the issue of vaccination. The Shire is renowned for the lowest vaccination rates in the country. Only 46% of 5-year-olds in Mullumbimby and 61% of Byron Bay children are fully vaccinated compared to the national average of 92%. Alison Gaylard, co-founder of the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group based in Mullumbimby, said the area was a magnet for conspiracy theories and anti-vaccination advocates who are embraced by a community that prides itself on being alternative, if not misinformed. Quote, he is a well-known anti-vaxxer, and among his inspirational memes thousands share on Facebook, he also posts misinformation about vaccination, and people like Wolfe are drawn to this area for that reason. They find the echo chamber they need, end quote, Ms. Gaylard said. 2 babies, including Dana McCaffrey, lost their lives to whooping cough during the 2009-2012 epidemic in the region, which researchers pinpointed as the epicenter due to the low vaccination rates in the area. David Wolfe, who refers to himself as, quote, the rock star and Indiana Jones of superfoods and longevity universe, end quote, and boasts, quote, the world's top CEOs, ambassadors, celebrities, athletes, artists, and real superheroes of the planet, mums, all took to David for expert advice in health, beauty, herbalism, and chocolate, end quote. He incorrectly states on his website that a, quote, growing body of evidence indicates that vaccines are not safe and that they can injure, permanently maim, or even kill you or a family member, end quote. There is no such body of evidence. Ms. Gaylard and the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters has sent an open letter to the host of the upcoming seminar, Jing Organics, requesting they not provide a venue for misinformation. Quote, hosting anti-vaccination activists in this area does nothing to help accurately inform the community about vaccines, but it does place them at risk by exposing them to falsehoods that could easily lead them to stop vaccinating themselves and their children. We see this as a public health issue and ask you to support us in our efforts to prevent the spread of misinformation like that which Mr. Wolfe has spoken about in the past, end quote, the letter reads. Local paediatrician Dr. Chris Ingle said hosting such people just creates further confusion and misleads people. Quote, we see a high prevalence of vaccine-preventable illnesses here that takes a real toll on children and parents. These people, like Wolfe, land up here with all the ill-informed views which may change the minds of some people and that can have a ripple effect which puts families at risk, end quote, Dr. Ingle said. On Thursday, Sydney vitamin company Mr. Vitamins cancelled a sponsored David Wolfe appearance in Chatswood after a social media backlash against the company. Owner of Jing Organics, David Kingsley, said he did not care about the concerns of people and hoped David Wolfe would spread the anti-vaccine message. Quote, I'm anti-vaccine and publicly open about it. Just because stuff is peer-reviewed doesn't mean it's true. David Wolfe is a World Health expert, end quote, Mr. Kingsley said. David Wolfe calls himself a nutritionist, believes the world is flat, and claims gravity is a hoax. Mr. Kingsley claimed vaccines cause autism because he is in the health industry. He makes sauerkraut and fermented foods and sells organic products. And he speaks to mothers whose children have autism. There are over 100 international studies that have debunked the link first put forward by struck-off doctor Andrew Wakefield. And that story comes to us from Jane Hansen, published at the Daily Telegraph, dailytelegraph.com.au, on the 26th of February.
It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
And joining me now on the line all the way from the north coast of New South Wales, the far north coast, it's the Raw Skeptic herself, Heidi Robertson. Hello, Heidi.
Hello.
Hello. I'm well, and so good to catch up with you. We don't actually chat often, do we?
I know. It's usually via text message about something skeptical that's going on.
Yeah, it really is. And I must say thank you for your reports over the last couple of years. The Raw Skeptic Report is certainly one of the highlights of the Skeptic Zone.
Well, I'm looking forward to doing more soon. It's been a little bit hectic lately.
Ah, yes. Well, life gets in the way sometime. Now, we just heard about this guy, David Wolfe, Avocado Wolfe, who is heading your way up to your neck of the woods. And I think you were partly responsible for an open letter about this. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so David Avocado Wolfe is coming to Australia for an Australian tour. Most sceptical listeners would probably have heard of him before. He speaks on a range of issues, and we're not really concerned with any of the stuff that he talks about, apart from his views on vaccination, which are misinformed and to do with vaccination. So we're not that happy that he might be coming to this region where, as everyone knows, our vaccination rates are abysmal enough as it is. And we're concerned that if he does get a platform by a venue hosting him in this region, that he will sway even more people who might be hesitant and not really sure what they think on the whole vaccination topic. He might scare them into not vaccinating. So it's the last thing we need in this region. I mean, Byron Bay, where he's going to be speaking, and just up the road at the Gold Coast where he'll be appearing the following night, these are hotspots for tourism as well. Byron Bay alone gets, I think, 2 million visitors every year.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's a very popular place, as is the Gold Coast for overseas visitors. And overseas visitors that might come from countries where measles and whooping cough and diphtheria and all these things might still be endemic, they bring them over here unknowingly, and then staying in regions with low vaccination uptake, like the Northern Rivers, and Gold Coast as well has low vaccination rates. It's just asking for an outbreak to occur. So the efforts that we're trying to put into increasing vaccination uptake here are not going to be helped by having someone like Mr. Wolfe speaking perhaps on vaccination.
What do you think is behind his popularity among certain circles? Is it because he just comes out with outrageous conspiracy theories, or is it because people see him as some sort of crusader for the truth?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not a follower myself of him on Facebook, so I don't know. But from what I've heard, he and I know that other successful sites do this as well. They post these really nice and inspirational memes, and there's nothing wooish or anything about them. They're quite reasonable and they're nice and they make you feel all warm and fluffy inside. But, and, you know, speaking to a lot of people who do follow him, a lot of them don't know about his more wacky beliefs, like chocolate being an octave of the sun and gravity being a hoax and mushrooms being from outer space. People don't know about those beliefs that he has. They like him on Facebook because of the warm and fluffy inspirational memes.
I wish gravity was a hoax. I wish.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be fun? But you wrote an open letter about this character, huh?
Yeah. So we wrote an open letter on our Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Facebook page, and we addressed it to Jing Organics, which is the venue that has agreed to host him in Byron Bay, also to the local newspaper, the Northern Star, and we also addressed it to ABC North Coast. So within about 3 minutes of me posting it up on our site, a journalist from the Northern Star got in contact with us and published a piece on it. And our friend Jane Hanson also got in touch and did a piece on it for the Sunday Telegraph, which came out yesterday in print, and a much more comprehensive piece online.
Well, Heidi, for the benefit of our listeners, let's have you now read out that open letter.
An open letter to Jing Organics, ABC North Coast and the Northern Star, to also be posted on their respective Facebook pages. We wish to bring your attention to the upcoming talk that David Avocado Wolf has been booked for in Byron Bay. We have concerns that in this region of already dangerously low vaccination rates, a known anti-vaccination activist will be given a platform to spread his misinformation surrounding the safety and efficacy of vaccination. As you're aware, the Northern Rivers, and in particular Byron Bay, is visited by almost 2 million tourists annually. This puts the region at an increased risk of travellers coming in from countries where vaccine-preventable diseases like measles and diphtheria are endemic. If a traveller comes in already infected and stays in an area of low vaccination uptake, it is placing the whole community at risk of an outbreak. At the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters, we are committed to providing the community with accurate information about vaccination and correcting misinformation where we see it. In fact, we have recently been endorsed in this capacity by the World Health Organization and now appear on their website as a trusted source of information on the safety and efficacy of vaccination. Hosting anti-vaccination activists in this area does nothing to help accurately inform the community about vaccines, but it does place them at risk by exposing them to falsehoods that could easily lead them to stop vaccinating themselves and their children. We see this as a public health issue and ask that you support us in our efforts to prevent the spread of misinformation like that which Mr. Wolf has spoken about in the past. We would like the venue booked, and indeed any other potential venues, to reconsider hosting Mr. Wolf with his conspiratorial, dangerous ideas. We will be accused of trying to suppress free speech. However, Mr. Wolf's free speech is hardly being suppressed when he still has plenty of other outlets on which to publish his opinions, such as his Facebook page, which has over 10 million followers. We believe that as a community group, we have the right to ask that venues in our region do not further assist him by providing him with a platform here, directly at odds with what we have been working so hard to achieve. Sincerely, Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. #Don'tCryWolf.
So, Heidi, what do you think listeners of the Skeptic Zone, especially the ones in your area, could do about this?
I think just Well, first of all, it doesn't hurt to get in touch with venue owners. I mean, we know in the past that when venue owners have been made aware of the nature of some of these talks, they've decided to not host the speaker. However, having said that, in this case, the speaker, the venue host, has been contacted and is pretty unrepentant. In fact, he's staunch anti-vaccination advocate himself. So that's probably not going to work in this case. I would just encourage people to tell their friends and family about Mr. Avocado's beliefs and how the message, the anti-vaccination message that he spreads is dangerous and not helpful, and to maybe think twice about sharing his posts on Facebook. There's actually a hashtag as well called it's the hashtag Don't Cry Wolf on so there's a whole trending hashtag that people can follow as well.
Well, Heidi, thank you again for your efforts. This Wolf character seems to be quite a character indeed, with some of his bizarre beliefs. But yes, ultimately, if he convinces parents of some of the nonsense, it could lead to very undesirable consequences. But I'm glad you're there, and my kind regards to Alison too, and all the crew there at the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters, who continue to do a marvellous job after all these years, huh? The years are starting to go by.
Yes, aren't they? Well, we very much appreciate all the support that you and our members give us. Couldn't do it without you.
Okay, Heidi, for now, goodbye, but we'll keep our listeners up to date on this issue.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hold the phone, hold the press, hold your horses. Some late breaking news on this story, once again from Jane Hanson, who writes in the Sunday Telegraph. Hunt for Anti-Vax Wolf by Jane Hanson. Sydney's International Convention Centre, ICC, has ignored community outrage and refused to cancel an event with anti-vaccination spruiker David Avocado Wolf. However, Wolf's quote, raw cacao dance party, end quote, at Marrickville Town Hall last night was cancelled by the Inner West Council after it was contacted by the Sunday Telegraph. Quote, Council decided to cancel the event after numerous complaints, end quote, Administrator Richard Pearson said. Quote, it is clear our community feels extremely strongly about Mr. Wolf and his highly unconventional views, particularly around the issue of vaccinations. They have made it clear they feel hosting Mr. Wolf in a council-owned venue is a validation and endorsement of his anti-immunisation stance, end quote, Mr. Pearson said. But the ICC is happy to host its $440 a head seminar with Wolf, who believes gravity is toxic, the Earth is flat, and vaccines cause cancer. Many of the sponsors are alternative health advocates with anti-vaccination views. Main sponsor, Superfeast, is owned by Mason Taylor, who has publicly criticised campaigns like No Jab, No Play, and suggests a mushroom strain called reishi has been shown to be just as effective. Quote, there should be a No Reishi, No Play campaign, end quote, he said. Another sponsor, One Group, is run by anti-vaccine activist Narelle Chenry, who was president of the Vaccine Information Service. She has given out advice online that children with whooping cough should be treated with herbal tea and rescue remedy. Opposition health spokesman Walt Secord said Wolf had, quote, a vicious opposition to life-saving vaccinations, end quote, and his claim that they were linked to autism and cancer was ridiculous. Samantha Glass, spokeswoman for ICC, said health activism events, quote, assured ICC Sydney that the content of this weekend's event is specific to nutrition and healthy foods. They have confirmed that David Wolf is not there to and is never going to discuss the topic of vaccination. The venue manager recognises the diverse views and beliefs of the community in which it operates. However, it is not its role to determine which of those views can or cannot be represented at events at ICC Sydney unless safety or legality is compromised, end quote, she said. And that story comes to us from Jane Hansen in the Sunday Telegraph, published on the 5th of March 2017. And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha with Kelly Wong.
I'm so excited to be here, honouring science at the 2017 Oscars. At the ceremony, African-American NASA physicist and mathematician Katherine Johnson, the inspiration behind the hit movie Hidden Figures, was invited on stage to standing ovation. And if that didn't bring a tear to your eye, well, nothing will. And two Iranian Americans, engineer and world's first self-funded astronaut Anousheh Ansari and former NASA scientist Firuz Naderi, accepted the Best Foreign Language Oscar on behalf of Iranian film director Asghar Farhadi. Then, of course, there's the Scientific and Technical Awards, held 2 weeks ago. Everything from advances in camera sensors to development of new facial tracking technologies were amongst those recognized this year. So without further ado, the most accurate depiction of science in a film goes to La La Land. Wait a second, guys. Thank you. This is not a joke. The winner is Hidden Figures.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, head for www.australiascience.tv. From the Glasgow Skeptics, Homeopathy in the UK with Michael Marshall. Now, this is happening on the 27th of March from 7 p.m. The Admiral Bar, 72A Waterloo Street in Glasgow. Homeopathy is one of the most widely debunked forms of alternative medicine, yet homeopathic remedies adorn the shelves of respected pharmacies and are funded by taxpayers on the NHS. How big of a problem is this? Using information and personal experiences gathered during his last 6 years of campaigning against homeopathy, Michael Marshall will highlight how much money is spent on homeopathic remedies and how this gives undeserved credibility to homeopathy, how such remedies can lead to genuine harm, and what you can do to help. This event is free to attend, although they will be asking for donations at the end of the talk. But you are under no obligation whatsoever to donate. Maybe you can donate homeopathically. However, any money that is donated is used to fund the overhead costs and travel and accommodation for speakers. So that's Homeopathy in the UK with Michael Marshall, the 27th of March at 7 p.m, the Admiral Bar, 72A Waterloo Street in Glasgow. For more information, check out the Facebook page of the Glasgow Skeptics, or just follow the links from this week's show notes. In all the years of Australian Skeptics, let's see now, Skeptics in Australia kicked off in 1980-81, around that time. The Victorian Skeptics, based in Melbourne, have been one of the more active groups. It's good to see they're keeping up this tradition as we read a report from skeptics.com.au published on the 17th of February by Tim Mendham. Vic Skeptics reveal dangerous products on sale at Melbourne Hospital. Victorian Skeptics Committee member Peter Hogan and President Chris Guest have revealed that a dangerous homeopathic teething product was available at Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital. The product, Hyland's baby teething tablets, had earlier been found by the US FDA to contain inconsistent amounts of the toxic substance belladonna and posed a risk to children. Vic Skeptics member Peter Hogan has been investigating the sale of Hyland's teething products in Australia. He told Fairfax Media that, quote, "I was quite shocked that the pharmacy at the Royal Children's Hospital was selling the stuff. I'm concerned parents may be gambling with their baby's health," end quote. The FDA investigated the product's links to the deaths of 10 babies in America. It urged parents to dispose of the tablets and seek medical care immediately if children experience symptoms including seizures, difficulty breathing, or agitation. It requested the manufacturer, Standard Homeopathic Company, to recall the products, but the company refused. Late last year, however, a Hyland's media release said it was discontinuing the distribution of its teething products in the US with, quote, "much sadness," end quote, after the FDA's safety warning. Australia's Therapeutic Goods Administration investigated Hyland's teething tablets and gel after the FDA issued its safety alert, but it apparently found no quality issues and said no action would be taken. Hogan questioned whether more testing was required, considering the FDA's finding of inconsistent levels of belladonna between batches. Concerns about the ingredients of teething gels go back some years. In Britain, the ingredient salicyate was removed from Bonjela teething gel after a 2002 study by the Commission on Human Medicines revealed it to be hazardous. A study published in the Medical Journal of Australia found that chronic salicyate intoxication could occur in children using these over-the-counter teething gels, even at close to recommended doses. Symptoms of teething gel-related poisonings include gastrointestinal problems, hyperventilation, tremor and memory lapses, and the risk of death. A TGA spokeswoman told Fairfax Media that samples had been tested from 2 batches of the tablets and no problems were identified. She said one batch of the teething gel was tested and the level of belladonna did not warrant safety regulatory action. Quote, "However, based on information from the FDA, we are considering whether testing of more samples will be useful," end quote, she said. Hyland's website lists numerous pharmacies that stock its teething products in Australia. Fairfax Media found it for sale at Drew Wood Pharmacy at the Royal Children's Hospital on Thursday. Vic Skeptics president Chris Guest had earlier written to the pharmacy with the skeptics' concerns, but had not heard back. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, is a plant that has been used in cosmetics and herbal medicine since the Middle Ages. It is also used as a recreational drug because of the hallucinations it can produce. And that story comes to us from skeptics.com.au, and good on the Victorian Skeptics for keeping up the pressure on all manner of woo and quackery. As the years drag on, this fight against nonsense never ends. And again we read about the real dangers of the utter quackery known as homeopathy.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszinski, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
I'm here at Sydney Botanical Gardens today to speak to 4 remarkable people who are working on the Restore and Renew project, which is gene sequencing at least 200 species of Australian native plants in areas that have been damaged either by just urban encroachment, or the land has been cleared, or it's been an open-cut mining site, that sort of thing. it's a big task ahead of them. We're going to meet Dr. Jason Bragg, the Scientific Officer, Dr. Marlene van der Meer, the Biodiversity Research Officer. We're going to have a chat to Dr. Maurizio Rossetto. He's the Senior Principal Research Scientist on Restore and Renew. And Dr. Hannah McPherson. She's in charge of the Biodiversity Genetics. So basically we're talking to 4 people that are a lot smarter than me, so wish me luck. Jason, come on in. Look, now I'm talking with someone who knows what's going on. It's Dr. Jason Bragg, the Scientific Officer, and I think your thing would be big data, wouldn't it? You're in charge of getting all this information of the genetic sequencing in and recording it in what way? What are you doing other than just recording it? What are you doing with your code that you're writing for it?
So I'm doing analyses of the data. I'm taking the data as it comes in, as it arrives to us, and I'm trying to turn that into information that is more accessible to people trying to make decisions about where to get their seeds from.
How much information would be coming to you in a physical form? You're talking petaflops of information. How much you got coming your way?
The data that we're using most of the time is already arriving in a fairly condensed form, actually. So it's arriving to me in quite a condensed form that is gigabytes, certainly rather than terabytes.
Okay. So let me get this straight. You've got 200 species of plants you're looking at, and each species of plant, there's 20,000 genetic markers at least. Is that the kind of information you're looking for?
Exactly, yep. That's precisely it. Yep.
And all you've got to do is just record that correctly in a form that people can understand.
Well, yeah, and it arrives to me in, as you say, it's 20,000 genetic markers, so 20,000 places in the genome where the different plants have a different base, a different A, C, G or T, and then I try to refine it further than that. I try to do analyses of it to turn it into a description for each of the species about how much genetic change there is among individual plants in that species when you go from place to place. So if you go 100 kilometres down the road or 200 kilometres down the road from where you're standing, how genetically different do the different individuals of this plant species get?
So you're recording in a digital way the diversity of a species?
Precisely, yep.
Wow,
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And tell me, do plants have as much junk DNA as humans do? Is there such a thing as junk DNA in plants?
It's enormously variable, in fact. So there's a species that occurs in Australia, Utricularia gibba, that has one of the smallest genomes among flowering plants. And if I recall, it was remarkable in that it had very, very little of what we would refer to as junk DNA. On the other hand, there are lots of plant species that have enormous genomes. So if the human genome, I can't remember how big the human genome is.
Well, you don't have to. That's not your area.
No, I think it's on the order of 3 gigabases or something like that. But there are pine trees that easily have 20. So they really run the gamut. Yeah, plants are extraordinarily diverse.
Yeah, look, I was going to ask, because we have to get into a few anomalous theories here. What do you reckon about when the ABC, the alien big cats, people every once in a while they seem to see a large cat that they reckon is in the bushland of Australia. Do you think there could be an escaped non-natural one, or do you think we've got an undocumented large cat wandering around out there? People keep reckoning they see him every once in a while.
Well, that's a great question. I guess the geneticist in me is probably a little bit sceptical about that, because it would probably okay, not saying anything controversial here. I shall proceed. That I think it would take quite a large, a reasonable population to sustain a species of large cats, especially over the timescales that we've over which they've been reported, and it seems like it would be hard to sustain that they'd be quite conspicuous if there were enough of them to have a viable population out there. So I guess I don't put a lot of stock in the alien.
And do you think there might be a Tasmanian tiger, a very, very, very tiny population of them hanging out somewhere in Tasmania? Because it gets pretty remote there.
It does get remote there. I don't have a strong opinion on that, but again, I'm sufficiently convinced that the Tasmanian tiger is extinct that it's an important reminder that once it's gone, it's gone. And so I feel like I'm sufficiently convinced that it is extinct to use it as a cautionary note and as an indication to us that we need to be careful with these amazing species that share Australia with us.
Well, look, welcome here to the Skeptic Zone. We're getting really sciencey here. I'm talking to someone who really knows their stuff. I'm talking to little Dr. Maurizio Rossetto. Oh, are you Southern or Northern Italian? What are you?
I'm Central Italian from Rome. So.
Oh, wow. No mucking about there.
No mucking about.
Yeah, wow. Actually, and look, before we go any further, what is your favourite Italian dish? Because every Italian feels very, almost, they have a fanaticism about food.
To keep to traditional, I say pizza.
Yeah?
But Italian-style pizza.
Ah, which means done properly.
Done properly, yes.
Yeah, none of that Chicago-style stuff.
None of that pineapple.
Now, what drew you to getting your doctorate in what you did originally? Why did you decide to specialise in that? Because it's a lot of years at uni.
Well, I was also interested in plant conservation, and at the time when I was doing my doctorate, genetics, which is the study of DNA, was really coming to the fore, and there was no one really, or very few people, doing what we know now as conservation genetics, that is, look at the distribution of genetic diversity across, at that time, rare species. I was working with rare species. And I kind of appreciated there and then that it was really critical information because we can learn a lot from the DNA of a species. We can learn about the dynamics. We can learn about the history. We can see how much they really are threatened because their evolutionary background has been eroded so much that really they are much more susceptible to change.
And with the area you're dealing with, which is New South Wales of Australia, what is one of the rare plant species that you would be glad to come across or find here?
Well, the one that we've done quite a bit of work with, and it's been fun to work with, is the Walama pine. The Walama pine is particularly interesting because we initially thought that there was no genetic diversity at all across the 4 remaining populations, but using some of the most modern and advanced DNA technologies, we were actually able to find some genetic diversity. Now, that might not seem as very important, but we are now moving to the next phase where we are going to look at the single genes of this species. And that will kind of tell us, it's not only so much maybe about looking at what's missing, but maybe looking at what makes this species with such a low genetic background, evolutionary background, still survive.
Do you think it's sort of evolution's got it to the point where it doesn't need a lot of diversity because it's almost perfected itself in its environment?
There can be some of that, and an example of that are what we know in evolutionary terms as island radiation. So when a small number of individuals end up on an island, they survive on that island, and then they speciate. They become all sorts of different species. Already, for them to be able to survive on that island as a small number of individuals, it means that they are particularly fit. So in a way, maybe more than having all sorts of different options offered to them, more importantly, it means that they have very few of those nasty alleles that could cause reduced fitness, like in breeding. We know what happens when, there's a village with everybody's related to each other, everybody's got the same surname, and it's not a very good thing, right? But in some cases, it just happened that those few individuals that get to the island didn't have any of those nasty genes, and so they can survive, accumulate diversity with time, and then radiate into different species and different forms. Often when we put the two words plant and DNA together, GMOs come to mind, and Frankenplant and what did you call it?
Frankenbush. People are worried about
Frankenbush and all this kind of thing. No, that's not what we're about. We're really about obtaining the information, interpreting it, and then making it available to the general public.
I'm just wondering, why do you think people get so alarmed about that, as even actual manipulation like is being done is pretty much what happens naturally anyway?
It is. I think most of, in this day and age, people that do understand about this natural evolution process, or the stand that ways of breeding, they do understand that the issue is not with the genetic manipulation, but it tends to be more with the companies that manipulate the plants for their own benefit. So they make it resistant to a specific herbicide that they produce.
Yeah, so look, again, it seems to be people don't have a problem with the science. It's more like the business end of it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Okay, well, I'm here with the last two members of the Restore and Renew project.
Marlene van der Merwe.
And?
Hannah McPherson.
Now, what are your areas of the project you're dealing with? What are you doing for the project?
I mainly look at species distributions and try to work out where to collect from and how to, and what each species, sort of interesting facts about it. And then once we have all the information, the genetic information, I try to interpret the genetic information with this other information along with it.
Okay, and what's your part of the project?
I guess I come in at various points as a bit of a logistics kind of helper, so trying to help deal with all the samples that we have coming in and some of the processes to keep information and samples tracking together through the whole process.
Now, you're dealing with 200 plants to start with. What's the most obscure one you're dealing with, that you think the most obscure of the 200?
Currently, we've just got information for a plant called Plectranthus parviflorus.
Wow, cool name, but what's it do?
Well, we didn't know what it was doing until we got the information, the genetic data, and we realised this plant self-fertilises.
Oh, yeah. So does that mean it's asexual? How do we describe it?
No? It has sex with itself.
Okay, wow, okay. Well, and so why don't we see a lot of it then? If it doesn't need an extra one it should be going off like nuts.
It's still outcrosses as well, but much less than we thought. So we do see a lot of this plant. It's very common. It's not something particularly pretty. It does make beautiful blue and purple flowers.
Because the blue is kind of rare.
Yeah, the blue is kind of nice as well. But
they're
the blue
tiny and they hide a bit, so I guess.
Oh, right. So what sort of environment do they like? Do they like sort of under rocks? Do they like shade? What do they get into?
Rocky shades along creeks.
Okay.
Often you actually find them along roads. Oh. Yeah, it also makes clones of itself. In addition to self-fertilizing, you can also just break a bit off and plant it somewhere and it will grow. So it's very commonly used in restoration work. And we still wonder, why does it still make these pretty flowers if it self-fertilizes? So there's something more to it still than what we know at the moment.
So it's still only halfway along its evolutionary journey, like it hasn't figured to get rid of the flowers yet, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's that's one of the interesting things about Restore and Renew, is that we have to sort of bring together all these different bits of information, like what fertilises this thing, how is it pollinated, all these different things, or is it even, or what does it do with itself? Like, it's all these different biological processes that we have to consider when we're also looking at the DNA and try and understand the patterns that we see across the landscape.
We have a lot of listeners to the show that are in tertiary education or about to go into tertiary education. Why would you recommend your particular field of study to someone who's going into uni rather than another field? Why do you reckon what attracted you to it, and why do you think it's a good one to study?
Plants are really important. We can't live without them. They clean the air, they make food, and they're beautiful. And every plant has an interesting story.
Look, I've said on the show before, I'm a big fan of the Western Australian pitcher plant. It's a carnivorous plant. It's top. Love it. I've never been able to grow one because the soil here is nothing like Western Australia, and it likes swampy soil. I can't do that. But what's your favourite plant?
I don't have a favourite plant.
Oh, that's good. See, that's politically a good answer to make. You don't want the other plants ringing up and getting upset.
We've got over 200 species on the Restore and Renew species list, and I can't pick one. I like them all. I also like many of the plants not on the list as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how in the field do you preserve the DNA quickly? Is it a freeze-drying process? Do you freeze? Or do you actually physically freeze them? What do you do?
So we take eskies with ice, and as soon as we pluck the leaves, we put them on ice, and then we race back to work. And or if we're out in the field, we express post them back, and then freeze dry them. And then once they're freeze dried, we could store them with silica gel so they stay dry and
Well,
should be
I'd
fine.
like to, final questions here. I'd like to ask you both, because you like getting out in the bush. I'd like recommended spots where people can go that they don't normally get to. Have you got a spot you'd recommend for people to have a look at that they mightn't have thought going to?
I think close to Sydney, people could go up to the Blue Mountains National Park, Glenbrook entrance. There's a beautiful swimming pool, the Jelly Pool. And it's a wonderful place to go and have a swim.
That's good. And you were out and about just last weekend. What would you recommend?
I just went camping at Wallandilly River, and it was just magic and so close to Sydney. Really good.
Okay, well, people listening, keep an ear and eye on this and look online for the Restore and Renew project. It's going to go for at least 4 years, but I think you've got a lot more work ahead of you than that.
I can go forever.
Okay.
Now a special note for fans of Maynard at Maynard.com.au. You can download your free Maynard calendar. Download, print out, whack on the wall. Spend 2017 with Maynard. For your free calendar, no strings attached. Well, you'll have to attach some strings to put it on the wall, or head for www.maynard.com.au. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. On next week's show, a special report from Maynard at Skeptics in the Pub, which we had the other night here in Sydney, where Maynard asked the big question of our pub goers. He asks, what do you know about witches and witchcraft? Because last week on the show we had the reading of a magic spell against Donald Trump. I noticed Donald Trump's still there, so I guess the magic spell didn't work. I didn't think it would. But anyway, Maynard wants to know, what do people think about witches? Or more importantly, what is their understanding of witches and witchcraft? Is it all comic stuff? Do they ride broomsticks? Do they have familiars? We'll find out what Sydney pub goers think next week. A big thank you to all those people who helped make the show possible. And not only my show, but Maynard as well at maynard.com.au. By chipping in for Patreon or PayPal, it makes all the difference. It simply is the difference between having a show or not having a show. So if you enjoy the Skeptic Zone, if you enjoy these other podcasts too, then why not give back a little bit? Chip in. It can be as little as $1 a week or even less, or $5 a week. You won't notice that money gone at all. It's a couple of cups of coffee at most. But collectively, it means that shows like the Skeptic Zone and Maynard's podcast keep going. It's as simple as that, and we thank you. But for this week, with the rain once again falling down outside my window, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, not too bad today. I just have to fiddle the levels here with this. Can you just count to 10 for me, please?
I don't know if I can do that. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off!
Close enough.
You're telling me to shut up.
No, I just have to fiddle the levels here. You're coming through very loud and clear. All right, so we'll just see how it goes, eh?
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Are you recording already?
Yeah, if only the listeners knew what goes on when we're recording.
BTS, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. All right, are you ready up there?
Hang on, let me just have a sip of tea.
All right.
Okay.
Dear me. All right.
I'm all class.
And joining me now on the line all the way from the north coast of New South Wales.